Hey guys, Mono here to bring you guys another competitive play analysis video, a series in which we break down pro players' gameplay and take a deeper look. This episode we're going to look at none other than Faker Playmaker and his performance on Vel'Koz against Fnatic Game 2 of the finals of IEM Katowice, in which SK won the series in a swift 3-0. So let's dive in. So before we look at picks, I want to go over bans and what SKT played Game 1 to be in this position. SKT drafted a specific poke composition made up of Poppy, Gragas, Corki, Ezreal, and Braum into a team fighting composition that Fnatic run, which can work really well if they play it correctly. SKT bans out Gragas, Kalista, and Corki, for they don't want to deal with the strong picks that were Blanks' Gragas and Faker's Corki, and they don't want to play against Bang's Kalista. However, SKT has a plan. They banned out Reckless's Jhin, Nidalee, who's a pretty strong in this meta, and Lulu, who's a strong team fighter, and to limit the chances of the Protect the Reckless comp that Fnatic has been running. Now, onto the picks for Game 2. Fnatic still goes with their strong team fighting centered composition. The comp will do decently early with the strong late game potential, as well as having a good amount of engage and crowd control. It specifically excels at reaching the backline, especially with Lissandra and Nautilus. SKT responds with a similar poke composition that they ran the first game, but replaced some picks. Instead of the Gragas, they opt out for the Elise, which provides the team with more single target CC and magic damage, but significantly less crowd control. However, they make up for the lack of CC by picking Vel'Koz as an option for more crowd control than the previously picked Corki. Their team comp has a huge amount of pick potential and scales well into the mid and late game, and has good tools for locking down that Kog'Maw. One thing to note is the matchup between Lissandra and Vel'Koz, which tends to be a skill matchup. Vel'Koz has the long-range damage abilities that can poke Lissandra down, and she can't respond well because she has low-range spells. However, she offers more engage and all-in burst, which works well especially if Vel'Koz is ganked. Now onto the game. So we're going to look at a very early laning mistake Faker does early on in this lane, and he starts Q versus Lissandra. Now, you always start W to evenly push the lane, and I mean, you don't have to do it all the time, but against someone like Lissandra who's going to use her Qs to push the lane very quickly, you need to use your W in order to respond by pushing as fast as she can. So in my opinion, I think Faker should have started W here to evenly push the lane and then take Q if he really wanted to. This mistake sort of leads into another error that Faker makes really quickly after this one, and this is a gank by Spirit. It's a very well played gank and a very good cohesion with Lissandra here to lock down Faker, and he has to blow his flash early. Now, a lot of things went into this gank here, and it's very interesting to see how this played out. So let's rewind a bit and go back to how Spirit cleared his jungle. He started from red, he went to his Raptors, and then went to his Wolves, to his blue buff, to the Gromp, and then to the top Sculler, and then he went down and ganked Faker from the mid lane. Now, if you go back even more, at 2 minutes, Wolf invades Fnatic's red side to put a deep ward and reveals that Lee Sin did do red buff and the Raptors. So, also going a little bit further during this whole process, Lissandra shoves lane and then goes to SKT's Raptors to scout their wave clear and their Elise's jungle path. And so Faker then shoves the wave, and then he goes and wards bot at around 2 minutes and 40 seconds. Faker is then not ready for the gank from topside because he has no vision, even though he was kind of further down in the lane, and so he had to blow his flash, and that ended up sacrificing him a lot of CS. Now, if he would have put the ward up further just to see where Lissandra was, or expecting Lee Sin to come from there, then it would be beneficial. But essentially, he warded somewhere where he thought Lee Sin was going to be, and he ended up not being there. And so he should have put the ward on the other side, and that ended up costing him some early lane pressure. So because of this flash, Lissandra was able to get an early game lead by roaming into other lanes and shoving the lane first and then roaming. She ended up getting a kill and an assist and had a slight CS advantage over Vel'Koz at that point in the game. But the tides turn in SK Telecom's favor very soon. So SKT does the dragon and gets a pretty good advantage over this, and then Spirit makes a pretty bad misplay and goes over to the wall to clear a ward, and in the meantime Vel'Koz catches him out over the wall. Now this is a very good tip for Vel'Koz players, that Vel'Koz is very good at making picks over dragon and Baron pit, especially if they don't have the vision control. So that's what he did right there, and he didn't even need to blow ultimate, as well as starting up a fight in which SKT was able to pull out ahead and kill Gamsu as well. So with that slight advantage, SK Telecom is able to start abusing their poke composition well. They gather around turrets, start poking them out from underneath the turrets so they can't defend, and then they take the objective, which is the objective for a poke composition. And so after this, at around 21 minutes, is when one of the key moments of the game starts to occur. Fnatic try forcing a fight near the Dragon 5v4. Gamsu flashes over the wall and hooks onto Ezreal, but misses and hits Wolf instead. Wolf quickly ults, hitting nearly everyone, which leaves Faker completely untouched to use his Q, his E, and his R, and completely melts the whole team. Now, everyone gets aced as they try running away, and there was an unsung hero to this fight, which was Blank, who prevented Lissandra from locking down Ezreal and Vel'Koz. Mainly, this was a very bad play by Fnatic, in which that they could have had the potential to win the fight and start turning the game into their favor, but instead there were some communication problems which resulted in them not fully engaging onto the backline targets, which is what their team comp is supposed to do. Although Fnatic lost the fight, they were not out of the game just yet. At 24 minutes into the game, they execute a really solid flank into trapping down Faker. Essentially, Braum, Ezreal, and Vel'Koz were trying to poke down the enemy team to prevent them from getting a turret, and then Nautilus came from the side and flanked them. Even though Braum and Ezreal managed to live, Faker died because he did not have flash, and they weren't really paying attention to where Nautilus was on the map. With this, they were able to get the easy pick on Faker and also able to pick up a tower. So right around the 26-minute mark, one of the most important fights occurs. SKT takes down the top outer turret, and then all of a sudden Febiven and Gamsu TP in to try to flank the enemy team. Duke also TPs in to try to stop the flank as well. So Febiven comes out with his home guards, but he cannot reach Vel'Koz, so instead he aims for the middle of the team, trying to lock them down and start shredding them instead. But Duke times a really good stun and a heroic charge and locks down Lissandra, making her pretty much useless for the whole entire fight. Meanwhile, while this is happening, Bang's Ezreal is soloing out Reckless and Klyze at the same time, the entire fight pretty much making them useless. The poke damage from Vel'Koz and Ezreal is causing enough damage to stop all of the carries to getting to Vel'Koz and Ezreal, and Braum and Poppy and Elise are doing a fantastic job at preventing any of Fnatic's backline carries to get to SKT's carries, if that makes sense. So this snowballs into a Baron. However, I do not think this was a really bad attempt by Fnatic. It was just very poorly executed with the Lissandra, and the Nautilus could not get into the back line, as well as Klaj and Reckless getting both soloed out by Bang's Ezreal. So that's just a really good play by Bang's Ezreal, and just a great play by SKT in general. So we're going to jump to the final fight of the game. At this point, SKT has an inhibitor down in the mid lane, and Fnatic is very far behind in gold, and they need a desperate pick in order to come back in this game, and they actually get it. So Bang and Blank back near the Baron pit. Fnatic catches Blank with a Thresher while he is backing, and they're able to kill him and also blow the Poppy ult. Now this is very important since Poppy ult is very good near Baron. So Fnatic ends up starting to Baron, but while they're doing it, they actually get poked down, and they're also very separate. They're not on the same page, and when they go to engage onto the enemy team 5v4, they are not in cohesion, and the engage ends up failing with a very good Braum shield by Wolf in order to protect the whole team. So SKT re-engage, and they're able to kill everyone, and with that, Duke is able to teleport and start hitting all the Nexus turrets, and SKT is able to win the game. Now let's cover some important aspects of after the game, and a summary and Faker's build as well. So just a general summary of the game, I think Fnatic did pick a really solid composition into SKT, but the problem was the cohesion when deciding to engage. Typically a high engaged team does very well against a poke composition because they don't have a ton of disengage or peel with their carries. They can really struggle against a really high engaged team like Fnatic ran. I do think the Kog'Maw pick maybe wasn't the best option, and maybe it was smarter to pick Braum earlier instead of Thresh, but again, that's kind of hard to tell during the pick and ban phase, and maybe Fnatic had a different plan going into it, and then they adapted to whatever they saw SKT pick. There was clearly a shot calling or like a communication problem within Fnatic and when choosing to engage. It was very clear with Febiven's engages onto the backline. I don't think they were very strong, and I don't think he actually locked down an enemy at any point during those team fights in terms of Vel'Koz or Ezreal, which he needs to really get out of the fight. And SKT just managed to play a lot better. They won by kiting back in fights and allowing Ezreal and Vel'Koz to do damage and slow them, and then slowly but surely, that's what I said, slowly but surely, they're able to kill the enemy opponent. So let's take a look at Faker's build, which is something pretty unique and I've never seen before on Vel'Koz. So he started with a Frost Queen's Claim, which built into Sorcerer Boots, and then he went Morellonomicon into Haunting Guise, which he eventually built into Liandry's, a Void Staff, and then finally Realized Crystal Scepter. Now let's talk about Frost Queen's Claim and Morellonomicon. So Frost Queen's Claim is good with the skirmishing and when you want to get vision control in the enemy jungle, and it also has CDR, and Morello also has CDR and also Grievous Wounds, so they kind of work well together and also have 30% CDR, which I'm a fan of, and I actually really like this decision. However, this is only good if you're pretty much untouched in fights like Faker was. So if I was him, I probably would have gone Liandry's, or like at least Haunting Guise and then into Morellonomicon, because I don't think if Lissandra ended up engaging onto him in the fights, then I think it would have been a lot harder for Faker to do his damage and actually be effective during this fights. So it's good in this case, but in other situations it probably would have been punished. So Faker also ended up buying Realize, which I'm usually against, but it ended up being good in this situation because he already has damage, and he wasn't really getting bursted, and so Zanya's wasn't really unnecessary, so he just kind of wanted the HP stack and also wanted more kiting ability, which I'm fine with in this case, but usually I'm against Realize. Well, that's all, folks, so I hope you guys enjoyed. Please leave a like if you enjoyed the video, or dislike if you did not. I'd really appreciate it if you would subscribe to help grow my channel. If you enjoyed so, please do so. So, hope you guys have a great day, and happy League hunting. Happy, what? League hunting? Oh my god. Why? I don't know why I said that.